we purchased a condo on Lake Michigan. My husband was moving in, and I was downstate 3 hours away, still packing boxes. Hubby and I had iPhones at the time. It was 2012. I called husband to see how things were going. During my call with him, another call beeped in. It was my husband's cell phone number. I jokingly told number one husband he was calling me on another line. So I put him on hold and took the call. It was indeed my husband. He said he was on his way home. And did I have a plan for dinner? I said, "Where are you?" He said, "In town. I can grab something if you want." I said, "Just a minute," and went back to first hubby and told him what was going on. He said he could hear our conversation and heard his voice. I went back to second hubby, but he was gone. The phone registered both numbers at the same time, with the second one disconnecting while I was talking to first hubby about the conversation with second hubby. It is now 2021, and I can't shake that call. When I was 17, I had my first job at a burrito place, sort of like Chipotle. The whole summer was painful because everyone joked about how I was the youngest one there, until this girl, we'll call her M, started working there. She was 15, and it was a relief to me. She lived near me and was too young to get her license, so I would drive her home on days we had shifts together. I was only there for the summer visiting my dad, so they threw me a goodbye party, and we all followed each other on Instagram to keep in touch. It's 5 years later, and I still follow everybody. But one thing that has always puzzled me is that about a year after I moved, she was posting tons of pictures of her turning 21. I thought it was a joke and ignored it. But this month, she turned 25. In December, she graduated from college. She's a teacher now, and is pregnant and married. I'm positive it's the 15-year-old I worked with, and not just someone that looks exactly like her with the same exact name. We've had chats about how we were pregnant at the same time, but my daughter was born first. If she aged with reality, she'd be 19 now. Only she's 25, and I never had the nerve to ask what the hell happened. In 2019, a workmate was diagnosed with cancer. It was found quite late, and he needed to go on sick leave for the foreseeable future to have quite aggressive treatment. The prognosis didn't look good, and I remember the day that we were all told that despite treatment, he'd passed away. I remember thinking how sad it was for his wife and daughters, and that given he was only 10 years older than me, it made me contemplate my own mortality. Today, I got a phone call announcing that he is my new boss. What the hell? I found a picture of him in his work profile, and sure enough, it's the same guy, rather than someone with the same name. Apparently, he even told my current boss that he used to work with me. I've gone through my computer and I can find the emails where we got a card together to let him know we were thinking about him. So he was definitely sick, but I'm certain he died, even though obviously he didn't. He's a nice guy, so I'm glad he's alive. But is there another timeline where I've just found out that the person I was talking to yesterday has been dead for over a year? Or am I going to find out he's actually a zombie? I went grocery shopping today, and the supermarket I went to didn't have one, but very important ingredient I needed for dinner. So once I was done, I drove to another supermarket down the road. As I walked toward the aisle I needed, I saw an older man looking at me, probably about 65 years old. I'm 26 for reference. Anyway, I looked at him briefly and immediately thought he looked like a much older version of my husband, who is 30. I didn't think much of it and began walking down the aisle. As I got to the ingredient I was after, there was a woman standing in exactly the same spot. She had blonde hair, was exactly my height, and looked like an older version of me. Again, about 65. Then I noticed we had the exact same handbag. It was a Louis Vuitton handbag that was given to me by an aunt I'm very close to. The woman looked at me and I swear to you, she slightly smirked before walking away. I stared at her back as she walked away before I heard a voice behind me call out my name. I turned, and it was the old man who looked like my husband. I then turned toward the woman and she started walking toward him. We had the same name, the same bag, and we looked so similar, albeit the age gap. It was the most bizarre experience, and I can't understand what happened. Could it be possible that I encountered an older version of myself and my husband? And what does that mean? So, I'm a snorer. It drives my wife crazy because she is a light sleeper. She will often move to the guest bedroom in the middle of the night. I also have a habit of falling asleep on our couch if we are watching TV late, and she will usually turn off the TV and head to bed before me, letting me sleep on the couch. I'll usually wake up around 1 or 2 a.m. and sleepily head to bed. One night a few months ago, we were watching TV downstairs, and I had grabbed a pillow from our bed. The couch pillows aren't particularly comfortable. I drifted off and woke up alone, in the dark, with the TV off a little after 2 a.m. When I got upstairs, I crawled into bed next to my wife, who rolled over as I pulled back the covers on my side. But I realized my pillow was still downstairs on the couch. Instead of going back downstairs, I decided to get one from the guest bedroom. It was dark, but I knew my way around and felt my way to get a pillow. When I yanked it off the bed, I heard a hey, and there was my wife, and there was my wife with her earplugs in she often wore because of my snoring. But she was also in our bed seconds earlier. I was in shock and stood there to let my eyes adjust, and sure enough, she was there, looking up at me with an annoyed, sleepy face. I dropped the pillow and walked back to our bedroom, and there she was curled up sleeping. Utterly confused and freaking out a little, I went back to the guest bedroom, and there was nobody there. I wonder now if I was half asleep or something. I have no explanation, and now whenever I go upstairs late, if I fall asleep on the couch, I always have this sense of dread, and always check the guest bedroom before going to bed. It's never happened since. For the past year or so, I have been noticing that things around me don't seem normal anymore. I continue to have this overwhelming sense that everything is fake, in a way, or almost dreamlike. I've even kicked around the idea that I may have died already, and I am in some sort of state of purgatory. I recently took my family on a weekend getaway to Seattle. Being a couple 100 miles away from our home in Selah, WA, it's an easy trip for my wife and I to manage with our 2 kids, 11-year-old and 4-month-old. Over the course of our weekend excursion, I experienced a few things that I found to be odd and left me feeling a bit uneasy. The first occurrence was trivial enough, but it sort of set the tone for the eeriness of the weekend. I was gazing out of the window of our hotel room on the 12th floor, sipping a cup of coffee, when I noticed a plastic bag drifting in the wind. I noticed the bag dance around in the air as it slowly descended. A green dumpster 12 stories below caught my eye, and I immediately thought, what if that bag floated all the way down there and landed in that dumpster? I stood at the window for 5 minutes or so watching this bag slowly float towards the ground, gliding left, right, back, and forth. The more I watched the bag, the more confident I became that it would find its way into the dumpster. And it did. This bag that I noticed off in the distance drifted 12 stories and perfectly navigated its way into the dumpster below my building. Later that day, I was in the hotel lobby, approaching the elevator to head up to my room. In front of me there was a man with 2 children waiting for the elevator as well. The man had a guitar case strapped to his back, along with an amplifier and various other bags. His back was to me, and he had a hoodie on. For some reason I thought to myself, what if that's Ed? Ed was a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in years. We used to work at an Olive Garden together in our younger days. We also played guitar together and did a fair amount of partying. Now, here is the weird part. And my wife thinks I'm crazy, but bear with me. The weird part was how confident I was that this guy was going to turn around and it would be Ed. The same confidence, almost certainty I would say, that I had in that trash bag flying into the dumpster. The elevator doors opened and the man and his 2 children walked inside. As the man turned around to enter the floor number on the elevator button console, it should not have been Ed that I recognized, but it was. It was Ed. We were both thrilled to see each other and even held the door open to chat for a moment, hindering other folks in the process. Even as this was all occurring, though, I couldn't shake this feeling that this wasn't real. It's a very difficult thing to describe, but things just don't feel real. Later that evening, my 11-year-old son and I were on the balcony outside of our hotel room. He was peering over the edge when he suddenly whimpered out underneath his breath. That poor guy. When I asked him who and what he was talking about, he said, "That bumblebee on the ground next to the dumpster. He's dead." We were on the 12th floor like I mentioned earlier, and there is no way this kid could see a dead bumblebee on the ground floor. Not to mention, the alleged bee was laying next to the dumpster that was the manifested landing zone for the floating trash bag. We argued a bit over whether or not he could see the bee, when he finally convinced me to go down and take a look. As we made our way down to street level, my thought process shifted. The same confidence that I had previously regarding the trash bag and Ed was back. Although I didn't mention it to my son, I was becoming increasingly certain that the bee would be there. And, well, it was. It was there, right next to the green dumpster containing the trash sack. The next evening, I took the family to a place called GameWorks, which is similar to Dave & Buster's, or an adult version of Chuck E. Cheese. I placed our car keys, wallets, and all other important things into our diaper bag/backpack, and we carried it on into the establishment. We spent a couple hours playing games before finally counting our tickets and claiming prizes at the prize booth. We pocketed the prizes and went down the block to the Cheesecake Factory for dinner. After being seated for a few moments, my wife realizes that I do not have the backpack on. The backpack containing all of our money, credit cards, car keys, and not to mention food and supplies for our 4-month-old baby. The bizarre thing is that I have no recollection of ever taking the bag off. Apparently I did, because it was gone. But I could have sworn up and down that I never took it off. I immediately go into panic mode, leap from the table, and take off towards the GameWorks establishment. I run inside and dart around frantically for about a minute or two, with the bag nowhere in sight. Finally, I calm down and focus. After breathing and focusing for a moment, I am greeted with the same confidence that I mentioned before. I was confident that I would not leave that place without my bag. At that moment, a man approached me, waving his arms in the air, calling me by my first name. He said, "Here, Cody, I've got your bag, man. Now get back to the Cheesecake Factory and enjoy your dinner." I was awestruck and definitely beside myself at that moment, as I had no clue who this man was, or how he knew my name, or where I was eating dinner. I didn't even think to question the man. I reached out, grabbed the bag, and left. This might seem coincidental to a lot of you, but these are just recent examples of how my life unfolds daily. Either I am a walking conduit of coincidence, or something larger is at play. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but things are definitely not the same they used to be. I don't know exactly how or why, but they just aren't. Things just don't seem real. About 2 years ago, I was sitting in my living room with my partner and a good friend shooting the breeze, talking about all sorts of things trippy and mundane, when my friend starts to tell a story about a synchronicity that involved her brother. Basically, the story she was telling had to do with several people having a different memory from the presented truth. At the same time, we both yelled out, "It's like the Mandela effect." And at that moment, we both got a funny look on our face and grabbed our noses. They started tingling. We both started yelling, "Whoa, what the hell?" Then, the room started to tilt from my point of view as if I was watching through a screen that had just got knocked over. My partner, a major skeptic of anything that can't be explained, sat there and watched the whole thing go down in shock. My friend, whose nose tingled, said, "Did the room just tilt?" Just like that, it went away, and everything returned to normal. As normal as things can get after that. I saw one post in here before that said they had experienced nose tingles and what felt like their pineal gland activating when looking at checkered tile. My reflection in the mirror moved when I definitely was not moving. I was standing at the sink looking down, but I could still see the mirror in my peripheral vision. I am 98.5% certain I saw myself raise my hand and put it down again in the reflection when my hands were still in the sink under the running faucet. I know that peripheral vision is hypersensitive to motion, but it moved a lot. I mean, just try it yourself, and you'll see how noticeable and obvious it is even if you're not looking directly at the mirror. Granted, I have been under an excruciating amount of stress in the recent weeks, so I'm wondering if this is just some weird trauma brain sleep deprivation hallucination, or what? I don't know. Either way, it's messing with my head. In October of 2020, I started a new job in a city that was about a 7-hour drive from where I lived at the time. It was a week-on, week-off deal, so I commuted. I'm hardcore a night owl. I get exhausted driving during the day, but can go all night and be perfectly fine. That being the case, it was around 2 a.m. on the night of one of my commutes home. I have a speeding habit. I was going about 80 miles per hour in a 70 on the left lane on the freeway. When I did my work commute the week prior, I didn't notice that there was a road construction going the opposite way, towards home. There definitely was. The entire left lane of the freeway was blocked off by concrete bumpers for a good stretch of the road. Because it was so dark, and because I was going so fast, there also weren't construction signs that I noticed. I didn't see the bumpers in time. I've been in a car accident before. That one wasn't on me, thankfully. And I had the same very distinct feeling of, oh no, I'm going to hit this thing. I didn't even have time to step on the brakes or try to swerve. I just closed my eyes and accepted that I was probably going to die. The realization and acceptance happened in a split second. The impact should have been pretty immediate. It wasn't, though. I opened my eyes and found myself smack in the middle of the right-hand lane driving normal speed. It shook me up. I drove about 20 under the rest of the way home. I've stopped telling people about the story I'm about to share because everyone assumes I'm making it up or had a stroke or something. But I sincerely feel like it must have just been a glitch in the Matrix. This thing happened to me when I was a senior in high school. Let me preface this by saying I was basically a great student and well-behaved teenager. I never drank or did any kind of drugs. I was extremely responsible. No mental health issues. Wasn't overtired or under stress. No history of seizures or any other medical problems. So here it goes. Classes at my high school went from 9 to 4 each day, and we had 4 classes per day. I took a calculus course that was only offered outside of normal school hours, from 7 to 8:30, and then I had an off period where I was permitted to leave campus from 9 to 10:30, and then needed to be back on campus for second period by 10:37. I usually woke up around 6:15, got ready, left around 6:45 and was able to make it to class on time. We had assigned parking, so I knew I would have a spot right by my math class. Some of my friends were in my class, so I always got dressed, put on makeup, etc. before class, even though it was early. After class, I would always drive back home around 8:30 and study after making myself breakfast, then leave again by 10:50 to be back on time. Well, this one day, I sort of just woke up in the hallway of my school right before second period. I ran into my friends and someone asked where my backpack or books were. I literally never used my locker and instead just carried my schoolwork with me at all times. I realized at that point that I didn't have any of my school stuff and wasn't even really dressed for school. I was wearing a t-shirt and basketball shorts, which isn't something I would typically wear and was usually what I slept in. I didn't have my car keys or cell phone. I didn't have anything with me at all, and I didn't know where any of these things might be. Even weirder, I didn't have any memory of driving back to school. I did remember getting dressed and going to my early math class that morning, then returning home afterwards, but had no idea what happened after that. I instantly felt very anxious and confused about what was happening. I told my friends I had to go. I went out to my car to see if it would jog my memory or if I could find anything. When I got to my car, it was locked, but it was in the right spot. My car was an older model that could only be locked in one of two ways. You could manually press down the lever on each door, or you could turn the key on the driver's side door to the right, and it would lock all the doors. No key fob or anything. Because the door was locked, and I always used the keys to lock it, I assumed my keys were somewhere at the school. I had no idea how to trace my steps without any memory before waking up in the hallway. But I went to my math class, looked around and couldn't find them, and used my teacher's phone to call my dad, who had the spare. I told my dad I didn't really know what was going on, but I was locked out of my car at school and had forgotten my schoolwork at home, so I needed him to bring me the spare. He was annoyed and asked me where my keys were, and sounded really surprised when I said I didn't know. He eventually made it up to the school and let me into my car. He looked around the car after letting me in, and suddenly pointed to my back seat where he saw my car keys just sitting there on the seat. At this point, he became concerned and asked if everything was okay, and if I was trying to avoid school for some reason. I tried to explain that nothing was wrong. I wasn't sick or anything, but was near tears as I was trying to explain that I would never be able to leave my keys in the back seat because I always used the key to lock the doors when I got out. When I went to start the car, the battery was dead. We couldn't find anything that was left on to kill the battery, but it wouldn't even start when my dad tried to jump it with his car. So we had to go out and buy a new battery. My dad was a little spooked and said maybe the car doors lock as a safety feature when the battery dies. But that made no sense, because how could they? So how had all the doors to my car been locked with the keys in the back? Why was my battery dead when I didn't leave anything on in my car? Why was I basically back in my pajamas even though I had gone to class that morning in jeans? And worst of all, why did I have no memory of any of this? It was as though all the details of my morning got scrambled and rearranged out of order. Or there was some kind of electrical short in the universe. We never did figure out what happened that day. And when I brought it up a few years later, my dad just said, "That was a really weird day." My house is on the very end of a row of houses on the far left. There's a woman who lives in the middle with her 2 sons to the right of my house. I have noticed within the last year that whenever I leave the house or look out my window, the woman and her 2 sons, one baby in a pram/stroller and one walking behind her, are always walking towards their house. We don't live near anything you can really visit other than a small corner shop. I thought maybe she was visiting somebody's house. But then it got weird. If I was outside really late at night, she would be there, with her baby who should be asleep. If I left the house twice in a day, she would walk past both times. At one point, I was in my garden for around 4 hours doing some gardening, and she walked past twice, both times coming from the same direction. Today was especially weird. When I opened the door to let my boyfriend in, she was walking past. But then, at 12 a.m., when I let him out, she walked past again, with her tiny baby. To top it all off, every time she walks past, she looks at me just as she gets to the lamppost with a slight smile, as if she's acknowledging something. She also always has her hair the same and dresses similarly, and I can never make out her kids' faces as they are wearing hoods or facing away from me. I don't know if this counts as a glitch, but it makes me feel like I'm in a weird Matrix simulation. So a few months ago, I had to take an emergency trip to Texas, and I packed all my normal things as well as a book I had just bought. It was a Mr. Rogers book about liking you just the way you are. I was in Texas and my wife stayed home in Washington. While on a video chat, I told her I was going to let her go and read a book. She asked which book, and I told her. And she asked me, "How? You left it here on the bed when you left, so I'm reading it." I told her, "Haha, funny," and held up the book for her to see. She looked very confused, and she then grabbed a book off of her side table and held it up for me to see. It was the exact same book. It even had the page dog-eared where I had stopped reading. We both sat confused for a long time, and to this day, I have no clue how that happened. My boyfriend and I have a tradition where we'll meet at Sheetz and get curly fries and milkshakes together, then sit in the car and listen to music. His workplace is only about a minute's drive from the Sheetz we go to, so we meet there after his shifts typically. We decided to meet up last night like usual. It was just after 8 p.m. when I pulled into the parking lot. I saw his car and parked in the spot right next to him, fully expecting to look at him through the window and see him laughing at my bad parking. I turned and looked at him through the window, and we locked eyes for a moment, until I watched him back out of his spot and drive to the exit of the parking lot. I watched him stop at the stop sign and then drive away on the route he always takes to go home. I sat there, extremely confused. I checked my phone for a text in case maybe something had come up and he needed to go home, but I had no messages from him. I started to panic a little, wondering if I had done something wrong and if he was upset with me. But even then, he's not the type to just leave like that. I sat in my car for a few minutes before deciding to text him. All I sent was, before he replied, "I'm here." I was even more confused. I know I had seen him leave. I saw him in his car, wearing the purple shirt and hat he'd been wearing all day, and I saw his license plate. It's a 4-letter word, so it's easy to memorize. I know I had seen him. I watched him leave the area and start going home, so there was no way he could have pulled back into the parking lot without me seeing. He told me to meet him inside, and sure enough, there he was, at the door, heading into the building. I was pretty startled, and I still am, because I know for a fact that I watched him look at me through the window and then leave. I told him what happened, and we both just laughed it off, but I can't help but keep feeling weird about it. I can't imagine how someone else could look exactly like my boyfriend and have the same car and license plate. I don't know what happened, and I'm a bit worried that I hallucinated it. So, one day my dad comes in the house and asks us to come outside. He said he thought he was going crazy because the yard looks different. We have a cute little arbor with grapes on it on the very right corner of my yard. It butts right up against the tree line and has always been there. When we went outside, it was moved at least 6 feet to the left. It was not against the tree line at all anymore. And when we went around the garage, since you can't see the pool from the house, we found that the pool moved a lot closer to the garage than before. It used to be a bit of a walk to get to the pool. Now, it was right there. We all agreed that it looked like they had been moved. We absolutely did not remember them being where they are now. Even some people that have come over since asked if we had rearranged the yard. We didn't even do any yard work like cutting back the tree line that could make the yard seem different. I have no idea how this happened, but the yard never returned to normal. This happened this morning. I had to wake up at 6:30 for my 8 a.m. class, which is only the next street over from my dorm, the library. I like to be there first, if not pretty early, so I left my dorm at 7:15. I was wearing a dark green sweatshirt, medium wash-shredded jeans, bright white shoes, and a black mask. On my way to class, I kept hearing someone calling my name, but they sounded really distant. I would turn around and there was no one outside because of how early it was. So, no one to call for me. I continued to hear my name being called from far away, but no one was in sight. At this point, I got a little freaked, so I ran across the street and up the stairs to the library. I may be on the 30th step of the 35-step stairs when I hear my name again, much louder than before, as if it was just at the bottom of the stairs. I turn back and just off to the right, at the bottom of the stairs, is myself, wearing the exact outfit I am in. She started up the first step, looked up, and we made eye contact. I got so horrified, and I ran up the rest of the stairs and into the door. I calmed down after a minute of just sitting between the interior and exterior door. I looked back over the stairs through the window of the door, and there was no one. Like the video if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe if you're new for weekly creepypasta and true scary stories. Every episode is uploaded to the SilverThreads podcast if you prefer just the audio. If you'd like to support me, I have a Patreon, links in the description below. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time with another story.